Welcome to this special episode of our program Daily Debate. Still we are with the outcome of the 27th UN Climate Change Conference, COP27, which was held at the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, has gained significantly on the international, regional and international levels by the hosting of this very important conference. During the conference, a day for solutions, a day for water, a day for biodiversity, for the first time were added to the conference. The conference achieved a breakthrough in negotiations and the adaptation of Article 7 on the loss and damage on the vulnerable countries. On the African level, the conference highlighted activating the Advancing Adaptation Action in Africa, launched by President Abdel al-Sisi after the success in obtaining the financial support from the world community and the USN to tune of $150 million in hosting the initiative, the initiative's management unit in Cairo. The African Adaptation Initiative, originally established in 2015, received funding at a value of $150 million and aims at establishing cohesion in collaboration between high-level pan-African and regional dialogues in order to implement adaptation while addressing the adaptation financial gap. Definitely we'll be speaking tonight, or we'll be focusing on the gains of Egypt in particular, and Africa at large, and the many initiatives that were launched and announced during this COP. We'll be speaking about the outcome of this COP with regard to vulnerable and developing countries. We'll be speaking, or we'll be focusing on that tonight. But before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a quick look on the top stories of the day. And President Abdel al-Sisi directed on Thursday to start implementing development work at Berdawil Lake within the framework of Sinai Berdawil Initiative. This came during President Sisi's meeting with head of the Suez Canal Authority, Osama Rabia, to review ongoing activities of the authority. President Sisi reviewed the movement of navigation in the Suez Canal, with Rabia saying the new Suez Canal had led to doubling the annual canal revenues to exceed $7.8 billion annually, which has supported the national economy by providing foreign currency. Beside the Sinai Berdawil Initiative, the Suez Canal Authority participates in the development efforts in cooperation with the Belgian company Demi. The initiative aims at increasing the Berdawil Lake fish production, which is famous for its distinctive quality. The increase is expected to extend from 4,000 tons to 11,000 tons per year on the short range and 50,000 tons on the long range. And we move on to our next top story of the day. And Egypt announced on Thursday that India has invited it to participate as a presidential guest in the G20 meetings during its presidency of the group meetings starting from next month and will last for a year. The Foreign Ministry pointed that it had officially informed the Indian side that the Foreign Minister's aide for Economic Affairs, Ambassador Raghi El-Etribi, would be tasked as the personnel representative of President Abdel al-Sisi at the G20 during India's presidency of the group. Ambassador El-Etribi said that Egypt is looking forward to attending different group meetings in order to boost international actions, especially regarding issues of priority to Egypt, Africa, and developing countries. And before we start with our main topic and the outcome and gains of Egypt from the COP27, Egypt and definitely Africa at large, let's first have this quick report. And Egypt has also, Egypt launched Friends of Greening National Investment Plans in Africa and developing countries. Let's watch.
Minister of Planning and Economic Development Hala Said launched on Thursday the Friends of Greening National Investment Plans for Africa and Developing Countries initiative that capitalizes on the success stories of partners in tackling the impacts of climate change. During the launching ceremony, El Said said that friends of the initiative will voluntarily work on increasing the share of green projects in their national investment plans by at least 30% by the year 2030. She noted that the initiative was launched in partnership with several countries, regional and international organizations, and financial institutions. El Said said that the initiative will help shape the economic policies that contribute to mitigation and adaptation efforts. She added that the initiative will propose a set of guidelines for expediting the implementation of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, Paris Agreement, and the National Determined Contributions, NDCs. She stressed that the initiative is in line with the need to work collaboratively towards finding solutions to tackle climate change in light of the fact that developing countries, especially in Africa, are the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. El Said made the launch announcement during the opening of the Solutions Day to exchange views and expertise and to figure out new, innovative and comprehensive solutions for the global climate crisis. COP27, which started on the 6th of November and concluded on the 18th of November, has seen various efforts by a number of parties to support African countries in implementing their climate commitments and accessing climate finance.
Right, welcome back. And before we delve into our discussion, let me first welcome our guest, Dr. Ayman Abdel Moneim, Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of California, the USA, and founder of the Egyptian Green Building Council. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
The pleasure is all ours. And let me start with COP27. COP27 put not just Egypt or Africa, but all the developing countries at large.
Yes.
All the very vulnerable countries to such a threat.
Correct.
As a priority, but in particular Africa and the Middle East. During this COP, we've seen lots and lots of stories of success, particularly for the African continent. Part of it was some of the initiatives that were launched. Let me see you reading to those stories of the success first.
I think the COP27 was a bit different version, in my opinion, than any others. First of all, this is after about 7 years or so, the first time we come back to Africa, because since 2016, everything else was somewhere else. Excuse me. So we came back to Africa, and I think what happened, Egypt always wanted to be the leader in that part of the world, and I think we have the credential to be so. We feel the same suffering like other African nations, although we are maybe in a better position. However, I think the outcome of this COP27 was not coincident. I think it was planned very well. Mm-hmm. And I think those, as you mentioned, the high reward for the African was the major program in the mind of the Egyptian government is to translate that forum into something to increase the justice between different countries. Africa, as you know, maybe with some exception, a few countries are suffering from many problems related to the environment. I just want to give you just some info. Every year, the African nations, they lose about $7 to $20 billion a year due to climate change. That, you would say, why and how? I mean, first of all, as I said, you can see the droughts, you can see the floods in Congo, and of course, the consequences of the climate change comes into not only the economy, but the economy also to the health of the people, the producers, and affecting the agricultural stocks and many other ways. And the dilemma is the African nation total, you only contribute about less than 4% of the carbon dioxide emission.
At large in
yes,
Egypt,
I
for
mean,
an instant 0.6.
I mean, 4.6, we as a globe.
No, 3.6,
right.
actually.
Yeah, but I'm just saying these are moving targets, usually the numbers. But what I'm saying is, I'll give you why it's moving target, because per day, the world emit 160 to 165 million tons of carbon dioxide.
Indeed.
All African nations, the contribution is only 4% of that, or 5%, which is translated to 6 million tons of carbon dioxide. So we are not really the big contributor, right? However, there is argument. Some people will say, well, the other guys are working, and you are taking those products, so somehow you are sharing the benefit. But it's not really true. The proportion is not fair.
But they are taking our raw
materials and stuff. So
exactly. So
yeah. So it's something that everybody. I mean, I remember back in 2005, before I founded the Green Building Council of Egypt. When I was spoken to people in the government, they were not realizing the green building movement. They were thinking, we have other priorities, and I was so thrilled, with the new government when the first speech in the United Nations by the first president after the revolution. I mean, if you remember that in the United Nations, the only one who was talking about sustainability, and that was for me. I mean, I was trying to talk to some officials, even low rank, and nobody wanted to listen. Now suddenly, the head of the state is talking the first speech to the world about sustainability. None of the people in that meeting ever talked about it. Maybe they don't know even the definition of sustainability. I'm very proud of it because I was proud, and I talked about it a lot in my lectures everywhere I go. So back to what you mentioned and how much Egypt have looked at the benefits for our continent. I mean, talking about Africa now. And three major issues has been developed or initiated in that unique COP27. The major part, I would say, the head line would be the loss and damage. The loss and damage, out of that, then you get some branches. So we have the model, the continental model of what we have initiated by the government in 2019, with the decent, living. Now, Egypt are the pioneer in this since 2019, and they don't want to keep that to their people. They wanted to extend that to the African. And so, out of the slogan of loss and damages. Go ahead.
Just not to mix things,
Sure.
because everything of what you said so is very important. First, the adoption of Article 7 of the International Law of Loss and Damage, and the formation of a committee that will have its task and mission at these upcoming months. That in itself is something usually big powers avoided.
Correct.
This article very much indeed. So that was in itself a story of success.
I think.
Some other initiatives, including the extension of decent life to Africa, these were other stories of success. So we spoke before about the loss and damage article and the committee that will be tasked with discussions. If I may have a quick look on this area, and then we move on to the other initiatives.
Yes, I think it's been planned many times, maybe since the Paris Agreement, that the industrial countries should help the other countries, the poor countries, that they have less, contribution to what we have today by investing in those countries and transferring technologies that are green technologies to open more venues, not only to help them survive and also develop their own protocols to save the environment, but also that will require a lot of financial requirements. And that's why the great thing is having the focus on recruiting the different institutions, financial institutions, to chip in and try to make that happen. And that's, again, as another outcome that I think is unique. But just you have to remember, we are, the COP27 is not an easy event.
Definitely.
And Egypt insisted to take it because they believe in it. And yeah.
Yes, and not only that, it comes at the backdrop of
But
2
that's what
years
I'm
of
saying.
pandemic
Yeah.
and a war.
So this is what I'm saying. It's not an easy one because everybody is exhausted. Until now, they are exhausted. The economy worldwide is very, very tough. I just came from U.S. and I'm telling you, it is tough even in U.S. Now you have the Ukraine-Russian war, and it's still is happening, and so everybody is suffering. And so some people say, let's just solve our problem now, what we have, and then think about the environment. That doesn't really work. It goes hand in hand. So I think it was something I'm proud of, that Egypt, with that old burden, still want to make sure until people know environment is first, we can deal with other problems as we go.
The other part where, of course, we are speaking here quickly on the loss and damage issue, because it will need lots and lots of work, particularly on the financial and the financial funds who would see the initiatives that
Correct.
we are really trying to do. 3 important initiatives were announced by Egypt.
Yes.
For Africa. The Friends for Greening National Investment Plans in Africa and Developing Countries, the Green and Smart Projects, Dr. Mahmoud Mohiddin announced, the Decent Life for Climate Resilience in Africa. How do you view such initiatives? How do you view the importance of such initiatives, not just for Egypt, but for Africa and afterwards all the developing countries?
That's a great question, because last year I had the honor to be invited in one of the summit Congress in Ghana and Accra, and the theme was actually on that direction. I think it's very important that people, or the different parts of the industrial part of the world, to think about Africa, because as I said, we have very minimum contribution to what is happening. And what I like about that initiative in particular, maybe I'll talk to you about it, is it's our initiative.
It is.
It is actually, if you look at the structure of that initiative, the champion, the official champion is our president. And then under this, we have the interim steering committee. And then we have also the Friends and the other organization working with us. So it is worldwide known that we are actually chairing or championing that thing. So that's why I'm proud of it. These other countries, like in India, like Emirates, have done some initiative also, proposed some. But I think this is why I like it very much. And I think the leadership of Egypt, especially in Africa, is very critical for all of us.
Yes, indeed. If I may speak here about those initiatives.
Yes.
What does this mean? Friends of Greening National Investment Plans. How does this sound? What does that mean? What is the meaning of this big mega projects that will be the green and smart projects in Africa?
Yes. again, I'm going to go back. I'm not just biased to Egypt. I have to tell you that we already have started that, and so it did not come from a space. That initiative.
That's Decent Life, by the way.
Correct.
So we'll speak about that.
Exactly.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is, Egypt already have done the prerequisite procedures in the beginning. As you know, we have started the investment on the green investment. That's what we're trying to translate it to others. For example, we are the initiator of the second largest, in capacity-wise, solar field in the continent of Africa. The first one, the largest one, is in Morocco. But we are the second largest, and then goes after us a few other countries. But what I'm saying, in a very short period of time, and the ambition of the leadership is even more. So I think that's lesson to learn. This is only one example of the investment in the sustainability or sustainable that will help the climate change damage to be listen and listen and listen. I'll give you an example. Only Bimpan project, it will reduce huge amount of carbon dioxide that goes to the air every year. We're talking about millions of tons of carbon dioxide. Nobody realizes this. Always people, they think about what they have, the bill, how much you pay in electricity, but it is very difficult to think about the future. And I always define the sustainability, and I think the leadership also are, here are thinking about this, and that's why they are, sometimes they are playing, is the definition of sustainability. And the definition of sustainability is nothing but not to be selfish. Think about generation to come. So yes, I want to pay, like say, a lower cost for electricity and so forth, but that's not only the benefit, that's for me. But what happened to my grandchild and the great-grandchild and so forth? This is why, like in the US, when they do project, they look at 100 years from now. So we are, I think we have that direction coming, and we have to show a role model to the whole world in that direction.
I guess we had the Decent Life, but before we go into the Decent Life again to illustrate more, let me take this second report. And Egypt launches Decent Life for Climate Resilient Africa initiative to improve lives in rural communities. Let's watch.
Minister of Planning and Economic Development, Hala Said, officially launched the Decent Life for a Climate Resilient Africa initiative, which aims to integrate climate action into sustainable rural development in Africa on the margins of Agriculture and Adaptation Day at the 27th UN Climate Change Conference, COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. Minister of Planning and Economic Development, Hala Said, said that the initiative will involve the implementation of a group of projects and programs to endorse African resilience, diverse livelihoods, and enhance the rural economy by encouraging private sector investments. Speaking at the signing ceremony, El Said added that the initiative is based on cooperation between African countries, various partners and stakeholders to improve the living conditions in 30% of the neediest rural villages and areas by the year 2030 in a climate-sensitive way. The launch was attended by Minister of Local Development Hisham Amna and the Secretary General of the UN and Executive Director of the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, Ghada Wali, and a number of African ministers. The initiative is an extension of Egypt's Decent Life initiative, which was launched by President Abdel el-Sisi in 2019 to improve the lives of around 60 million people who live in more than 4,500 villages and rural areas nationwide at a cost of around $50 billion. Participating in the launch, UN climate change high-level champion for Egypt, Mahmoud Mohiddin, said the Africa initiative comes within the framework of localizing development in a way that is separate from issues of centralization and decentralization. He emphasized the importance of enhancing human dignity within the framework of sustainable development, praising Egypt's efforts to attract investments that have transcended Egypt's borders to include all African towns and sub-regions. He thanked President el-Sisi and the Egyptian government for their efforts to launch many smart green projects and transform ideas into projects in Africa through many regional partnerships and within the framework of a comprehensive approach. Muhyiddin also praised the efforts by Germany and the US to support adaptation in Africa, pointing to the establishment of the Cairo Center for Learning and Excellence on Adoption and Resilience, in addition to supporting the Africa Adoption Initiative. COP27 has seen various efforts to support African countries who are the most vulnerable to climate change in implementing their climate commitments and accessing climate finance. On Friday, Sameh Shoukry, president of COP27 and Egypt's foreign minister, announced the launch of the Cairo Center for Learning and Excellence on Adaptation and Resilience to accelerate climate adaptation across Africa.
Right, welcome back, and back to you, sir. And we were speaking about decent life.
Yes.
We may have the graphics we had before on our plasma. So here, Dr. Ayman would tell us more. But until then, let me know from you how you view Egypt's commitment to such a cause and the initiation of such a big initiative like Decent Life, plus definitely some of the other green projects we'll be speaking about later.
Yes, I feel like we are ahead of anybody else, at least in our continent, and not even worldwide, in a very short period of time. We have done things actually naturally, without going through even Congress or COP27. We have been doing the last 5-6 years huge amount of work in environment. I will tell you something maybe people don't realize. Some of the things that may not be easy to understand, what you are doing in improving the huge improvement of the highways and roads in Egypt. That's actually sustainable investment. You know, by having that, you reduce the amount of carbon dioxide because you have no congestion in the traffic. You are increasing the development in some areas, remote areas. You increase the green investment in Egypt. In addition, as you saw in Zafarana and others, we have already the huge windmills projects, and we're doing now in Alamein and so forth. So I think that's why those issues has been raised during the COP27. And I think because we were qualified to host that tough and difficult conference, that we actually succeeded to do so because we had that history. So I think what we are doing now, or the initiative that has came after the COP27, is a very natural extension of the mentality and the planning, the plan that we have. So you have a roadmap. All what we're trying to do is to share our experience with the world, and we need also commitment from the world to help us. As I said, all of us in a tough time, but we need the commitment from all these big countries, because they have promised that in the last
Here is the
conference.
Decent Life Initiative for Climate Resilient Africa.
Yes, that's why I said it's very important for me, because I'm proud of it, because this came from Egypt purely. The champion, yes. And as you know, the champion is the person who, or the entity that led that or initiated that effort. Now it is the top is the champion is our president, Dr. Sisi, and we have a steering committee, and this steering committee for African, instead of having every single country participating in the steering committee, what we do, which is very smart, is to divide Africa into regions, 5 regions. So we take one country from each region representing that region. So we have 5 countries now representing the whole continent in the steering committee. And then we have the friends and the other contributors, our partners. And these are, you know, different banks, even the Egypt experience or of the decent living of Egypt, actually part of that group in the friends. And then we have banks, we have some countries like Jordan is involved, and others are involved. And you go back to the interim secretarial committee, which is, you know, doing all the work. This is interim, so later on, you know, this is just a birth of a new initiative. So later on, that chart will be more complicated than what you see in the screen.
Indeed.
Right now.
When it comes to Africa, it will be definitely so complicated. Other initiatives or other, we spoke about renewables, we spoke about eco-friendly environment, we spoke about the green hydrogen.
Yes. Again, actually where I came from in the University of California at Irvine, we housed the U.S. National Center for Fuel Cell. And the fuel cell is the storage for hydrogen fuel. Again, just want to remind everybody, hydrogen is hydrogen. The word green or the label green, it is a correct label, and that depends on how we extract the hydrogen. If you extract it by fossil, I mean the conventional way, by burning things, then it's good, but the cost for the environment is very high. But if we extract the hydrogen using like solar energy or any sustainable resources of energy like wind and others, then we can label it now to be a green hydrogen. And then we can store that in different cells, very compact. You can use it in many ways here. The good news also, I heard myself that there is an initiative, local, national initiative to start some industrial projects to produce hydrogen. Again, when I say hydrogen or green hydrogen, I'm sure also we will be using electrical energy, or we're going to use the solar or wind and so forth. And you know, the issue always is when you produce even electricity in Egypt, and we have too many stations now, people will say, well, you burn some of the fuel, fossil fuel. But the benefit is, if everybody will burn some gas, like in your car, with no control, versus you have a government controlled facility where they control everything, so the damage is very small. So that's what I'm saying. Even electricity that's produced by conventional fuel still is much better than that. Now, if we start, and I believe that we will start working on developing facilities to produce the green hydrogen, that will help a lot, because then we can use that in many applications, like in automotive industry,
Yes.
in industrial, even in lighting and air conditioning our houses. You can do that also by the same technology.
Take us to also implementing that or applying that in mega projects. However, my time is out and I have to end it here. Dr. Ayman Abdel Muslim, Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of California, USA, founder of the Egyptian Green Building Council. We thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and I'll always wish and pray that Egypt always will be first and in the center of the world.
Yes, we all hope.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And dear viewers, many thanks for watching. And I guess next debate will be next Sunday, so have a nice weekend.